Hello and welcome to the podcast all about becoming a health coach. I'm Megan McCrory, an aspiring integrative nutrition health coach. If this is your first time tuning in, I'm happy you found the podcast. You may want to go back and listen from the beginning to hear more about the health coaching journey. It is kind of a week by week story as it unfolds, which I don't know the ending yet because it's unfolding every week. So let's go ahead and dive right in. We are on week 5, module 5. And just to let you know, it's not always going to be week 5, module 5. It's not the same week in module. Actually, for week 6, we don't have a module. So I'm going to be filling in those weeks where we don't have a module with some other interesting stuff that I'm learning, and also less about what I'm learning in the course and more about what I'm doing on the side of the course. So stay tuned for that for next module, module 6. Or week 6, no module. So this week's lessons focused on the raw foods and superfoods, juicing versus blending, career satisfaction, fear and taking action, the relationship between money and self-worth, and the golden path step 4. So this week was jam-packed full of stuff. I mean, it was packed. Really, really full. And I have a feeling they did this because, as I just mentioned, in week 6, we don't have a module. So I have a feeling they said, let's put as much stuff in week 5 as we can, give people 2 weeks to get through all the material. But let me just say, I know at the beginning, the first couple weeks, I was like, okay, this could go a little faster. I'm not feeling like I'm really getting, is this all it's going to be type of a thing? But now I'm like, okay, I see. The doors have opened. The floodgates have come. So let me just dive into the beginning of this lesson, module 5. So the first thing that we saw was a huge presentation from David Wolf called Raw Vitality. That was the name of his presentation, and it was all about superfoods and the raw food diet. And I have to admit that some of the stuff I knew or I understood before, but there was tons of information this guy gave that I had never, ever heard before. And I think I'm pretty versed in the land of nutrition before I started this course. But now I'm realizing how much I don't know, and it's a little scary. So he talked a lot about all kinds of different things that you can add to your diet to help support and what they did. And this guy just kind of rattled off scientific names for a lot of things. I mean, just off the top of his head. And you can see that he really is passionate about what he's talking about. And I had never seen David Wolf present before. I'm signed up to follow him on Facebook, but only because he has like these nice inspirational quotes. I find they're quite nice. So it was also interesting for me to see this guy talk. He kind of, he's not a really polished public speaker. He had a few things that I think maybe the international community, like he was making jokes that are kind of like read between the lines. But for like the international students, I'm not sure they would get what he was getting at. So I think he could probably polish his presentation a little bit more and reach a broader audience. But on the other hand, he is who he is, and he's not trying to be anything he's not. The information was really valuable. He suggested some mushrooms, which I've never had mushrooms before. And I know everyone says mushrooms, and you're thinking some kind of like wackadoodle mushrooms that are going to get you high or whatever. But they're also medicinal mushrooms, which are really awesome. So after I watched his presentation, I went online and I bought what he calls the king of the medicinal mushroom, which is the chaga mushroom, CHAGA, chaga. And I bought this as a mushroom powder, and I can add it to my smoothies and other things. And I'm just trying to see, trying new things. And that was one of the assignments as well for this week, was just like try these things out, see how you like them. Because I'm more likely to recommend something that I've tried and that works for me. Or let's say I've tried that, isn't harmful. Not everything works for everybody, but if I'm really passionate about something, people know it. When I start to talk about something I'm passionate about, they get in. I realized that I had that effect when I'm passionate about something. So I really wanted to try that. And I also tried MCT oil, which is a medium chain triglyceride oil, which is a whole podcast in itself, and kind of ties into the ketogenic diet, but can be done or used without that diet, but it's kind of one of those things that's linked to that. So I bought those two things and tried them in my smoothies this last couple weeks. So it's been pretty good. I don't know if I really feel an effect, or let's say sometimes I mix too many things together, so I'm not sure what effect I'm getting. I think the MCT oil has a pretty good effect. I'm not sure about the mushrooms. But again, some of these things are like just over time, anti-inflammatory, anti-aging, like keep your body in a nice state over the long haul. So I think it's, for me, as I'm skeptical sometimes about a lot of this stuff, like, okay, is it really doing anything for me? The problem is that we don't really know until we're older if this stuff is really working, right? So I am 39 this year, or will be 39 this year, and I don't really want to take the chance anymore. Is it, it's easy enough to add simple things to your diet. I'm not removing anything, just adding in a few things. And if they have any chance at all in helping me with my brain health when I'm older, or to keep me being able to do the things I want to do longer in life, I'm just going to do it, right? I mean, it's kind of like, if it doesn't hurt anything, it's fine. If I'm just wasting money all these years, okay, I don't mind. But if I don't do it, and I wish I had, like in 20 years from now, somebody's like, some really awesome studies come out and they're like, this thing's amazing, you should have been doing this your whole life. And I start when I'm 60, yeah, I'm going to feel like a total dunce. I mean, so at any rate, this information was amazing. I think he has his own line of supplements and stuff, which typically they always do. I think it also looks a little shady when they have their own supplements, but he didn't really push his supplements. He used them in his demonstration, but didn't really like try to sell them, like salesy typeness, sleazy saley. So I would say I didn't get his supplements. I just got a supplement of the medical mushrooms. So do as you wish. Try it, don't try it. It's okay. But in general, I think it's really interesting to learn about these things. And a lot of this stuff is coming from the East. So roots that are used in Asia and India and Japan. And, these things that have been used for really hundreds of years, that back then nobody needed to know the science behind it. They just knew it worked. And that's the other thing about superfoods in general, or these kind of, roots and berries and other things that you're like, okay, yeah, whatever. There's no science behind it. You can't prove anything. But on the other hand, I'm like, okay, just because there's not been a scientific study that proves that whatever, blueberries help your eyesight or whatever, maybe there has. Just because there hasn't been a study doesn't mean it's not doing it. It just means that nobody's documented that it does it. It also doesn't mean that it does. I'm not saying that, you can just take everything on blind faith, but I think sometimes people really get in this mindset of, the FDA hasn't had any review of this. I can tell you for sure, I'm in the medical device industry, and the FDA does not have the bandwidth to test everything, and they're not doing that great of a job anyway. So just because some governmental body doesn't study it does not mean it's not working. It just means that there's no study. So I think, I really wish like half of all graduates could do research, and that we'd have enough money for research. But research for these types of things are not helpful, because superfoods are typically something that's grown naturally and naturally occurring. And, research is typically poured into something where there's going to be a product at the end that's worth a lot of money, and someone is paying for the research to get to the product to make the money. not about the consumer. It's more about the money. So, okay, that goes back to kind of like the politics of things. But, okay, let's get back on track. So the David Wolf thing was amazing. Really good. The next speaker was Joe Cross, who I saw in his documentary, which is called Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. It came out, I want to say like 5 years ago or something like that. Like in 2012, 2013, something in there. And I watched it several years ago, probably 2012, 2013. And I bought a juicer afterwards, not just because Joe had done it, but because I had seen, I knew anyway the juicing was good. And he got up and kind of basically just went through about the documentary and why he did it and whatnot. And I really like this guy because he's not an asshole. He could be a rich asshole because he's rich. He just sold a couple businesses when he turned 40 and decided to do this thing, this Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead documentary. And I respect him because, he tried to get the video or the film more widely seen. But, the major movie studios didn't want it because what can you sell from it? It's not but he went ahead and went to local health community centers and things like this and really just kept getting the word out about your health and the fact that I think the bottom line is that you can change yourself with food. And really food does change everything about you. And you can do that. You don't need a magic pill. You don't need a special trainer. You just need to manage what you're eating. And I think that's really interesting. They also talked a little bit about the difference between juicing and blending. So juicing is where you extract the juice and you leave all the fibrous bits behind, or most of the fibrous bits behind. And so in that respects, juicing has a higher sugar content because it's really just the liquid. It also is absorbed much quicker. And this is good and bad, right? So it's absorbed much quicker, which means the nutrients go into the body much faster, much easier to process. But because it's much easier to process, that means the natural sugars that are in the juices will also spike your blood sugar a bit. So if you're trying to watch your blood sugar, if you're pre-diabetic, juicing a lot all the time is almost the equivalent in terms of sugar content as drinking like a soda. There are other good things, obviously, about juice, but it should be done with the mindset of like a vitamin, not a soda drink, right? So a little goes a long way with juicing. And juice is really good for when you're sick or something where you really want to just get a lot of good nutrients in quickly. Now, blending, on the other hand, or smoothies or whatever you want to call them, this is where you basically put the whole fruit or vegetable or whatever it is into the blender and you're blending this thing up and everything's together, the fiber, and it's much thicker typically. And this is good and bad, again. So neither one is right, neither one is wrong. It's about using the right method for the right situation. So blending, making smoothies is more about, you can almost replace a whole meal with this because you have a lot of fiber. So you're going to feel a lot fuller after a smoothie. You are not going to spike your blood sugar as much, even though you have the same amount of juice in, let's say if you juice one orange versus blending an orange up, right? The juice of one orange, you're going to have less volume because you're not going to have the pulp in, and if you the fibrous parts. And if you blend the same orange up, you're going to have a little bit more volume because you have the fiber in. But you still have the same amount of juice in either one. But the thing is, when you blend, that fiber acts as a inhibitor, or it slows down the processing of the sugar that's in the juice. So when you have the juice without the fiber, you're going to get much more process out of that much quicker. Your body's going to process it faster because the fiber's not there to slow it down. And that's what spikes your blood sugar, and that's what increases your insulin reactions. When you blend, you have a much slower digestion. But what it does do is it also makes it a little harder for the body to pull the nutrients out of that orange. And so you're actually getting a little less nutrients because it's a little harder for the body to digest that because of the fiber. So that's why I'm saying it's a fine balance between right and wrong. One is not better than the other. You want to use them in tandem, in concert, in the right situation. So I would maybe, if I don't really feel like eating too much for dinner, I might blend up a nice smoothie, like 3 or 4 greeny type of vegetables or leaves, and maybe 1 or 2 fruits to sweeten it up. And that's a good smoothie because it's not so sweet, a little sweet, but more you're looking at the whole foods and the vegetables there. Whereas, last week I was sick, so I juiced up a couple beets, some carrots, and some oranges because it had so many good antioxidants and wonderfulness in this. I just wanted to get it in my body to help my body fight whatever it was fighting off. And I wanted that. So you just use one when it's right. I would not recommend to juice a large quantity of juice every single day. Let's say fruit juice, right? Now, if you're juicing your spinach, your wheatgrass, whatever, you're juicing something that's not a sugary product, go ahead, juice away, right? Because it's really the sugar in a fruit juice that's the most concerning for me. So, juicing versus blending, let me know which one you prefer, if you do both. I have both a masticating juicer, which is a slow juicer, and this is what I would recommend to anybody who wants to start juicing. I would say skip the cheap centrifugal juicer. These things, you cannot juice any kind of leaf in those things. It just spits it out. It doesn't actually juice anything. So if you want to juice leaves like kale and spinach, chard, etc., that are really, really nutrient dense leaves, you need a masticating juicer for that. And that's just, or I think they're called slow juicers. Okay? They're a little more expensive, but definitely worth it. So we talked about superfoods. We talked about juicing. And the next thing that we talked about in this module 5 was career. Again, this is another reason why I really like this program. They really kind of cover in each lesson a little bit about everything. So they talked about the primary food. So again, primary food is what you feed your body that's not food. So the premise is that we have primary food and secondary food. So secondary food is everything that you put in your body. So those are those juices and blending and superfoods and whatnot that you put into your body. And primary food is your career, your relationships, your physical activity, and your spirituality. And then a little bit around those, but those are the 4 main primary food topics. And so they talked about the primary food of career this week and about creating your career and doing something that you love to do. So you can be very, very healthy in a lot of different areas of your life. But if you have a job that is not fulfilling you, a job that's causing you stress, a job that is toxic, or the environment or the people or whatever is not good for you, you're still going to be feeling stress and other things that will basically undo a lot of the good stuff that you're doing in other aspects of your life, especially your nutrition. So it's very important to have a good solid footing in those other 4 areas: career, relationships, spirituality, and physical activity, in order to make sure that you're fully healthy in a holistic way. So they talked about doing what you love or love what you do. So, if you can't do what you love, figure out a way to love what you are doing, which I like that. It's not always about changing your job. It could be about changing your mindset. It could be about changing something else that you're doing at work. changing your environment at work, adding flowers, adding inspirational quotes. I mean, lots of little things that you can do to help support your mental health at work if you can't change your job right away. Then we had another guest speaker in this area. His name is Maston Kipp. Never heard of this guy before. He talked about, his lecture was called The Fear Fallacy. So he talked a lot about basically, why are you not doing the thing you want to be doing, right? What's holding you back? It's fear. Fear is holding you back. So walked through basically taking courageous actions. So what can you do to make that next step? So if you were to change your job right now, would anybody die? What's the worst thing that could happen, right? And he kind of, showed that if you just think through the process, what is the worst thing that can happen if you did what you wanted to be doing right now, but you're not doing? And really, how bad is that, right? So his talk was okay. He was an okay speaker in terms of presentation and whatnot. But in general, I think the idea is face your fears, do the courageous thing, and step out of that box if you think you can do that. And if you can't do it now, what can you do to get to the point where you can do that? Along the same lines in career, they opened up the Golden Path step number 4. So the Golden Path is basically this, 15 steps. Kind of looks like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. And the first step, the Golden Path, was to define our goals. The second step was to be healthy, to shift our perspective on health and to be healthy. Number 3 was to foster a positive mindset. So basically carving out our own time, spending time with yourself to connect with your intuition, like what you want to do. And the 4th step, which was introduced in Module 5, was called Manage Your Time and Take Action. So reframing your words and thoughts and actions related to time itself. So essentially everybody has the same amount of time in the day, whether you are a CEO of a big company or you are homeless on the street or you have kids or you have, you're in space. Well, I guess, I don't know. Does space count? Because I think they actually have more time in a day because they're orbiting. I don't know. That's a good question. Let's take the astronauts off of that list for now. But everybody else on Earth has the same amount of time in a day. And what you do with that time is how you can make a difference in your life. So you can't say, I need to manage my time better. Because time is going to tick no matter what you do. You need to manage yourself better. So if you reframe it and think about it a little bit more like, what do I need to do in this 1 hour? Not the hour is going to pass whether you do something or not. It's what are you choosing to do in that hour that's going to take you to the next step, make you a better person, move your project forward one point, spending time with your family. I mean, all of those things, whatever is important to you, that needs to be, brought into this relationship with time and how you schedule yourself and whatnot. So again, I think a lot of this stuff from the course is interesting, and they do a pretty good job of having activities for you to walk through. It's not just talking at you like a talking head, but really, really having some actionable items that you can do. So the last guest speaker that we had is a woman by the name of Kate Northrup. And her lecture was called Net Worth and Self-Worth. So she basically told her own story about her own financial woes and how she handled that. But I think the basic takeaway from that particular lecture is whatever your situation is with your money, that's not you, like in terms of your self-worth. And a lot of times people tie in like their financial problems with their self-worth and how to avoid that. And she talked about how to, first acknowledging that you have a problem and basically telling the truth, finding support, coming up with a plan, all geared towards, I think, more of the American thing, which is people who are usually typically in a lot of debt. I don't see this problem as much in Europe as I do in the US, where people are living really paycheck to paycheck, or I should say in debt. So maybe people are living paycheck to paycheck, but they're not in debt. So I think that's quite a big difference, and also a big stress maker. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and in debt, you're really behind. You're not ahead at all. And you're not even like nose to nose. You're really still behind. So I did the Financial Peace course by David Ramsey, like in 2006, maybe a long time ago, because I was close to bankruptcy as well. And I was close to bankruptcy just because I had one medical bill that was a little out of my reach in terms of paying off. And in the end, after I took this course and really focused my attention onto my finances, I was able to come up with a plan. At the time I talked with my parents, and I was they let me come back home and live for 6 or 8 months while I could then just pay down those bills, get out of it, and then move forward. And now I have to say I'm in a much drastically more different financial situation than I was in 2006. I'm completely out of debt. I have more savings than I know what to do with. Part of that is because I moved to Switzerland and the wages here are awesome. But it's also really expensive to live in Switzerland. So I always wondered, like, what am I doing right in Switzerland? And a lot of the things is the shopping and impulse buying and buying stupid shit over and over again, rather than just like taking the time and finding something good and just sticking with it. So I think really my shopping habits have changed a lot moving here, whether that had to do with the fact that I don't know the brands. So clothes shopping here is difficult for me, also for my size, because I'm just on the edge of the sizes that they have in the stores. Really, I don't know what happened, but in general terms, I don't really spend as much on, I should say, small stuff that kind of like chips away at your monthly budget. So I haven't kept a budget in a long time, even though I feel like in the back of my head, I should just keep a budget like every month just to have it. But it seems like a waste of energy when I know that I don't need to do that, because I'm quite consistent with what I pay for now. Anyway, that's a long way of saying that, it's your financial situation at one point in your life is not going to have to dictate what's going on in the rest of your life. You just need to take care of it and take care of yourself while you're doing that, so that it doesn't bring you down in a way that should not bring you down. Those were the main topics for this week's lesson. Honestly, my impression is, if I had learned this much, I would say in 3 weeks, because the first 2 modules were kind of light. And module 3, 4, and 5, I think were pretty juicy, or getting juicy. And I'm just like, oh my God, how much more stuff am I going to learn? And I have to tell you that when I accidentally clicked on one of the libraries, they have these libraries in our e-learning tool. And there's a business library and a business toolkit. And both of those things opened up on module number 3 or 4. And I missed the memo. I just didn't realize they had opened up. And like the amount of information in these business library and business toolkit is blowing my mind. Like they have more videos in there. They have handouts all about, let me just open one up and I can tell you, because it's really incredible how much information they have in the business library. And there's more libraries to open up. So in the business library, they have an accountability and support area. So how to find a mastermind group. I'll talk about that in another episode. Time management. They have your business basics, even down to like, should you register as a sole proprietary, a LLC, or a corporation? And they explain the difference between these things. How to build your practice, how to create your future, how to start seeing clients. They have also a whole section on engaging and expanding your audience with social media and how to do that, which I think is awesome. Marketing with purpose. So creating a marketing plan, how to love marketing, because a lot of people don't. I think it's fascinating. Maybe I missed my calling there. How to write a newsletter, what's copywriting about, promoting your products, target markets, workshops and lectures, how to create your first workshop, how to do your story, your vision, your rates, even how to, come up and set your rates and leverage your value. I mean, there is so much information here. I was kind of a little overwhelmed, like, how am I going to work through this? But I think what I have to do is kind of go through and create a plan every week to look at different sections and basically tie this into my normal module every week. So it's going to be awesome. And I really don't know how much more information. I mean, I'm only on week 5 and we have 40 modules. Not to mention the coaching calls, so the coaching circles in the fall, and the health histories will open up in module 10, which is what you do for like your initial consultation. Really can't wait for that because I have a bunch of people that I'm ready to do health histories with, and I really want to get practicing on the health histories. So I'm super excited, very, very motivated, and I want to wait to tell you in episode 6 what I'm doing on my own outside of the course. And I'm going to go through all that in episode 6 since I have no coursework to tell you about in episode 6. I'm just going to go ahead and dish all the good stuff that I've been working on. And as you can tell, I'm very excited and motivated. So I think that's it for lesson 5 or module 5. If you are a new health coach, someone who's just started out or still in school, I would love to contact you. I've had a couple people reach out already. It's awesome. We're just trying to connect so that I can get some interviews. So if you are a new health coach, and you didn't go to IIN, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, I'm especially interested in learning about what school you went to. I think some of the other common programs are Dr. Sears' Wellness Institute and the Health Coaching Institute, which I think is an offshoot. These ladies went to IIN. Those are the 2 other that I know. There's also some functional diagnostics nutrition courses and some other stuff. And I am really, really interested to hear from other people about those courses and how they like what they're getting there, and if one is better for another person than whatnot. So I'd like to get some comparison. Email me at becomingahealthcoach@gmail.com and let me know when you're available, and we can set up a call and record it for the podcast. If you want to read any of my articles or connect with me further and get on my mailing list, my website is mybestself.fit. That's all you have to write, mybestself.fit. And you can also email me through there and connect with me through there. So I appreciate you for listening. Thank you so much for joining me this week, and have a great weekend. Hey, you're still listening. Great. Okay, now I can tell you about my 12-week goal setting session. So in this 1-hour session, I'm going to help guide you through a powerful process inspired by the best-selling book, The 12-Week Year. I know. Everybody at this time of the year starts to think about year-long goals. And I would argue that year-long goals are really hard to contextualize. What is going to be happening in a year from now? You have no idea. But 12 weeks. 12 weeks gives you a little bit better understanding because you kind of already have your calendar booked out for the next 12 weeks, kind of know what's going to be going on. So if you can focus your goals on the next 12 weeks, you can make some really big actionable steps towards your long-term vision. So in this 1-hour session, we do talk about long-term vision. We talk about where you want to be. We talk about what your 5-year, 10-year, 3-year, all those goals are. But that's only a brief part. We know we see the long distance view, but let's break that down. And then we get into the 1 to 3 strategic 12-week goals that are going to get you to those long-term vision. Then we're going to put that into a really cool action plan with like checklists and timing and all that jazz to make sure that you are clear and that you have accountability to get those goals done. And then that's not it. Then we are going to tackle your roadblocks because you know you have roadblocks. So we're going to tackle those roadblocks. We're going to create a plan to overcome them. So you know when you start to self-sabotage, you know what you can do to get around those roadblocks. Okay, so if this is interesting for you, it is only 1 hour of your time and it's only 45 Swiss francs. I host this gig over on Fiverr, but I'm also going to put a link down in the show notes. So if you're interested, hit me up.